The end of summer should be a time for last memories, bonfires, late night drives, and one final breath of freedom before the cold sets in. But for some, those final nights didn't end with laughter. They ended in fear. These are 3 true haunting end of summer horror stories that prove not every season fades. Quietly, some leave scars that last forever. It was the last weekend of August when a high school senior named Emily went on one final camping trip with her friends before the start of the school year. They had chosen a lake deep in the woods, a place they had visited many times before, where the nights were warm, the fireflies glowed, and the air smelled of pine and smoke. For Emily, it was supposed to be one more memory before everything changed, before college applications, graduation, and the end of childhood. They set up their tents, built a fire, and spent the evening laughing, telling stories, and roasting marshmallows. Everything felt normal, even perfect. But when the fire burned down 2 embers, and the group started retreating to their tents, Emily decided to take a walk down to the lake alone. The moon was high, casting silver light across the water. She sat at the edge of the dock, listening to the crickets, letting the cool night breeze brush her skin. That's when she heard it, a splash. Not far from where she sat, something had broken the surface of the water. At first, she thought it was just a fish, but then she heard it again, louder, closer. Ripples spread across the glassy lake, but she couldn't see what caused them. A chill ran down her spine, and she quickly stood up, staring at the dark water. As she turned to head back toward the campsite, she froze. Across the lake, just at the tree line, there was a figure standing in the shadows. Tall, motionless, watching. She couldn't see a face, couldn't even tell if it was a man or something else, but she knew it was staring directly at her. Her first thought was that it had to be another camper, maybe someone from a nearby site. But when she blinked, the figure was gone. Emily ran back to the tents, trying to shake off the unease. She didn't mention it to her friends. She didn't want to ruin the night, but she barely slept, her mind racing with images of the figure by the trees. The next day, they swam in the lake and hiked the trails. Everything seemed fine, and Emily started convincing herself she had imagined the whole thing. But that night, the atmosphere shifted. The group was sitting around the fire again when they all heard it at once, the sound of branches snapping in the woods just beyond their circle of light. They shone their flashlights into the trees, but saw nothing. Then came another sound, this time from the opposite side. It was as if something or someone was circling them in the darkness. Nervous laughter filled the air as they tried to brush it off, but deep down, they all felt it. They weren't alone. Later, as everyone settled into their tents, Emily lay awake, listening. The night was too quiet now, the kind of silence that presses against your ears. Then, she heard footsteps. Slow, deliberate, moving around their campsite. She held her breath, terrified, as the crunching of leaves grew closer. Something brushed against the outside of her tent, dragging lightly across the fabric. Her heart pounded so loudly she thought it would give her away. She wanted to scream, but her throat locked up. The dragging sound stopped, and for a moment, she thought whoever or whatever it was had gone. But then, just above her head, she heard breathing. Long, steady breaths, inches away from her, separated only by the thin layer of tent fabric. Emily lay frozen, gripping her sleeping bag, praying it would end. After what felt like an eternity, the breathing stopped, and the footsteps slowly retreated back into the forest. She didn't sleep a second after that. When the sun rose, she rushed to tell her friends, but none of them had heard anything. They laughed, teasing her about being spooked so easily. But when they stepped outside, they noticed something that silenced them. In the dirt surrounding their campsite were footprints, large, bare footprints, circling every single tent. Emily's stomach dropped. They packed up and left that morning, cutting their trip short. None of them spoke much on the drive home, but Emily couldn't shake the image of the figure across the lake, standing at the edge of the trees, watching. Years later, she still remembers that final summer night. The whispers of the woods, the footsteps around the tents, and the terrifying thought that someone had been waiting for them out there in the dark. For Emily, the end of summer didn't just mean saying goodbye to carefree nights with friends. It meant realizing how quickly safety and warmth can dissolve into fear. And the worst part, whoever was out there never revealed themselves. They just let her know, in the most haunting way possible, that she and her friends were never alone. In late August, a young couple named Marcus and Lily decided to spend a weekend at Lily's family's old summer cabin. It was the last chance they had before the fall semester started at their university. And Lily wanted to relive a piece of her childhood days of swimming in the lake, nights filled with the songs of cicadas, and the comfort of knowing this cabin had been in her family for generations. The cabin was tucked away in the woods, down a dirt road barely wide enough for their car. When they arrived, the place looked exactly as Lily remembered: weathered wood, a wide porch, and a quiet dock stretching out into the water. But there was something Marcus noticed that Lily didn't. The cabin felt watched. He couldn't shake the uneasy sensation that the trees themselves were hiding eyes. They brushed it off and tried to enjoy their stay. The first day was peaceful. They swam, cooked dinner, and watched the sun set over the lake. That night, however, things began to shift. As they lay in bed, Lily suddenly woke Marcus up. "Do you hear that?" she whispered. He listened closely, and sure enough, faint music drifted through the trees. It sounded humming, soft and slow, almost like a lullaby. The strange part was that there were no other cabins nearby it, at least not within earshot. Marcus stepped outside, flashlight in hand. The air was thick, with summer humidity, crickets chirping, and that eerie humming sound floating through the night. He walked to the edge of the trees, shining his light back and forth. But the moment he stepped closer to the woods, the sound stopped. Dead silence. He returned inside, shaken, but Lily insisted it was probably his imagination. They tried to sleep, but neither of them truly rested. The next day, they decided to hike one of the old trails behind the cabin. As they walked deeper into the woods, Lily noticed something carved into a tree, a symbol she didn't recognize. It was crude, like two overlapping triangles with a circle in the center. Marcus brushed it off, saying kids probably carved it, but Lily felt her stomach twist. As they continued, they saw more of the same carvings on different trees, always facing the trail. It was as if someone had marked the path deliberately. By the time they returned to the cabin, the sun was setting, casting long shadows across the porch. They tried to distract themselves with dinner, but both of them were tense, waiting for nightfall. That night, the humming returned. This time, it was louder. Lily and Marcus lay frozen in bed, listening as the sound seemed to move around the cabin, circling it. Then, clear as day, came the creak of footsteps on the wooden porch. Marcus jumped up, grabbed a heavy flashlight, and rushed to the front door. He flung it open, shining the beam across the porch and into the trees. Nothing. No one. The humming had stopped. But when he looked down, his blood ran cold. There, on the porch steps, was a wet footprint. Bare, human, and leading up toward the door. Lily begged him to call the police, but Marcus hesitated, thinking they'd never believe a story like this. Instead, he locked every door and window, and they huddled together in the dark. Around 3 a.m., they heard something that nearly made them run out into the night, the sound of whispering. Dozens of voices, overlapping, impossible to understand, but surrounding the cabin on all sides. Lily began to cry, clutching Marcus's arm as the whispers grew louder, pressing against the walls. Then, just as suddenly as it had begun, everything went silent. When the first light of dawn broke, they wasted no time packing up. Marcus carried their bags to the car, and as he did, he noticed something that made his skin crawl even more than the night before. All over the cabin walls, drawn in streaks of mud or something darker, were symbols, the same ones they had seen. carved into the trees. Circles, triangles, all scrawled across the wood. They didn't wait to clean up. They drove off, not stopping until they were miles away from the cabin. Later, when Lily told her parents, they were shocked. No one had been to the cabin in years, and there were no neighbors anywhere close. They went back weeks later with a relative to check, but the symbols were gone, completely vanished, as if they had never been there. Lily and Marcus don't talk much about what happened that weekend. All they know is that the humming, the whispers, and the symbols marked the end of summer with a darkness neither of them can explain. To this day, Lily has never set foot in that cabin again, and she swears she never will. In early September, just as summer was fading into fall, a group of college friends decided to take one last trip before classes started. They rented a small beach house along the coast, a place advertised as quiet, affordable, and perfect for a weekend getaway. For 3 nights, they planned to swim, party, and enjoy the freedom of summer one last time. The house itself was older, with peeling paint and creaky floors, but it had a charm to it. The back porch opened onto the sand, with the ocean stretching endlessly beyond. On their first night, everything went as planned. They blasted music, made drinks, and stayed up late playing games. It was well past midnight when one of the friends, Jason, stepped outside for air. The night was calm, the tide rolling in gently, and the moon reflecting across the water. But as he looked down the shoreline, he froze. In the distance, someone was standing at the edge of the water, motionless, watching, at first. Jason thought it was another late-night beachgoer, but the longer he looked, the more unsettled he became. The figure didn't move, didn't shift, didn't even seem to breathe. Just stood there, staring back at him. Jason went inside without saying a word. The next day, the group joked about how creepy the old house felt, but Jason kept quiet. He didn't want to sound paranoid, but that night, things grew stranger. They were all asleep when Emma, one of the girls in the group, woke up around 2 a.m. She swore she heard footsteps on the porch outside her window. Thinking it was one of the others, she peeked through the blinds. What she saw made her stumble back. A man was standing there. His face was pale, eyes wide, and he was staring straight into her room. She gasped, pulled the curtain shut, and shook her boyfriend awake. When he ran outside to confront the man, the porch was empty. The group searched the property, but found no one. The sand, however, told a different story. Leading up to the porch were barefoot prints, large ones that stopped right at the steps, as if the man had simply vanished. The atmosphere in the house shifted after that. No one laughed as easily. Every creak of the floorboards made them tense. They locked the doors, shut the windows, and tried to convince themselves it was just some drifter passing through. But, on the final night, the haunting revealed itself in full. Around midnight, the power went out. The lights flickered, then died, leaving only the sound of waves crashing outside. They grabbed their phones for light, uneasy but trying to stay calm. That's when the knocking started. Slow, deliberate knocks against the back door. 1, 2, 3. Everyone froze. Then, from the other side of the house, came more knocks, this time against the front windows. The group huddled together, whispering frantically about calling the police, but their phones had no service. The knocking grew louder, faster, spreading across the house, as though multiple people were surrounding them. Suddenly, Emma screamed. She pointed to the living room window, and everyone turned just in time to see a face staring back at them. Pale, expressionless, pressed against the glass. Then another appeared at the next window, and another. There were at least 3 figures outside, all watching silently. The group scrambled upstairs, barricading themselves in a bedroom. The knocking didn't follow this time. Instead, the house went quiet again, so quiet that they could hear their own heartbeats. For hours, they sat there, waiting, listening. At some point, exhaustion overtook them, and they drifted in and out of sleep. When morning finally came, they crept downstairs. The house was empty, the doors still locked, but outside, the sand was covered in footprints. Dozens of them, circling the house, weaving back and forth, like whoever had been there had spent the entire night pacing around, waiting for a way in. The group packed their bags and left without even cleaning up. None of them ever spoke about it again in detail. But years later, Jason admitted that what haunted him wasn't just the footprints or the faces at the windows. It was that first night when he saw the lone figure standing by the water. He said he had a sick feeling then, a gut instinct to leave, but he ignored it. And by the end of that summer, he realized something chilling. Whatever had been waiting for them on that beach wasn't random. It had been watching all along, waiting for the right time. The end of summer is supposed to be bittersweet, one last memory before the days grow shorter and colder. But for the people in these stories, those final nights left behind something far darker than nostalgia. A shadow in the trees, whispers around a cabin, and faces pressed against the glass reminders that the warmth of summer doesn't always keep the darkness away. If these stories gave you chills, don't forget to hit the like button, it helps more than you know. And if you're new here, make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss another upload. I share real, haunting experiences that will make you look twice at the places you thought were safe. I also want to hear from you. Have you ever had a creepy or unexplainable experience at the end of summer, maybe during a vacation, camping, trip, or a last late-night adventure before school or work began again? Share your story in the comments below. Thank you for reading. And remember, summer may fade, but some things linger. The next time you're enjoying a quiet night under the stars, listen carefully. You never really know who or what might be listening to.